If you walk down the self-help aisle of a bookstore today, or honestly, if you just open Instagram for 5 minutes, you are going to be bombarded with this one singular command. It's everywhere.
On coffee mugs.
On coffee mugs, in bios, corporate seminars, the command is always, find your truth.
Or live your truth.
Exactly. Live your truth. It's become, the golden rule of the modern era. We're told that the spiritual journey, or really just the journey of being a person, is an act of customization. It's about curating beliefs that fit you perfectly, like a bespoke suit. You pick the lining, you pick the fabric, and if it pinches somewhere, you send it back.
It's the ultimate marketing slogan for the soul, isn't it? I mean, it implies that reality is this big buffet, and you just take the parts you like and leave the Brussels sprouts for somebody else.
And it feels good. It feels so empowering to be the architect of your own reality. But today, we're doing a deep dive into a text that takes that warm, fuzzy concept of personal truth, throws it on the ground, and just shatters it.
It's not a gentle critique.
Not even close. We're looking at a piece called The Invariant Sacred, Beyond the Personalized Spirit, specifically excerpt 17. And the argument here is, well, it's really controversial. The author says this modern obsession with my truth isn't just self-indulgent. It's the primary thing actually destroying true spirituality.
That is a heavy claim.
Yeah.
The core thesis is that personalization is really the enemy of accuracy. The text argues that the moment you make truth about you, your history, your preferences, your identity, you stop seeing what's actually there. You trade reality for a mirror.
So our mission for this deep dive is to unpack this idea that personalization fractures truth. We need to get the difference between what the author calls psychological artifacts, which is a term we'll get to, and the invariant sacred. And I have to admit, reading this, I felt resistance. I felt a little defensive,
Sure.
It goes against everything we're taught about validating our own experience.
And that resistance is actually useful here. The text sort of anticipates it. If you feel defensive, it's probably because you've done exactly what the author is warning about. You've made your beliefs part of your identity, so you aren't just hearing an argument, you're feeling an attack on you.
So let's break down how that happens, because the text outlines this very specific chain reaction. It's almost mechanical. Lays out 3 steps. Step 1 is simply, spirituality becomes personal. That seems harmless.
Right. We all have personal experiences. We all see the world through our own eyes. Seems obvious.
But step 2 is where the shift happens. The text says, when spirituality becomes personal, it becomes owned.
Owned.
Owned. That's an economic word. It's about property.
And that's deliberate. I mean, think about how we talk. We say, my truth, my journey, my perspective. The source argues we treat insights like they're intellectual property.
Like real estate.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Once you see a belief as yours, you've invested in it. It's an asset in the portfolio of who I am.
And that investment leads right to step 3.
When it is owned, it becomes defended.
That's the logical conclusion. If I buy a house, I put a lot on the door. If I buy a worldview, I have to protect it from counter-arguments.
Precisely. And this is where the trap snaps shut. The text says, when it is defended, perception bends to preserve identity rather than remain faithful to reality. That is the crucial point. Once you are in defense mode, you are no longer a seeker. You're a security guard. Perception
bends. That's a frightening idea. It implies we aren't just being stubborn. We literally stop seeing the world accurately. We hallucinate confirmation of our own biases.
We do. Imagine you're a scientist observing an experiment, but you've decided ahead of time that the result must prove your theory is correct. You will subconsciously or even consciously tweak the data. You'll ignore the anomalies. You aren't observing anymore. You're just managing a PR campaign for your ego.
So the real consequence here is we lose touch with reality because reality is just too risky for our own identity.
Yes. The text is very clear on this. True spirituality cannot survive this move. The moment you prioritize preserving your ownership of the truth over the truth itself, you're out of the game.
Yeah.
You might still use the language of spirituality, but functionally, you're just reinforcing your own ego.
But let me play devil's advocate for a second. In therapy, in modern discourse, owning your narrative is a strength. It's about agency. It's about taking power back. Is the text saying agency is bad?
I don't think it's attacking agency. I think it's attacking fragility. When you own a truth, you become brittle. Because if that truth is proven wrong, then you are diminished. You lose property, so you can't afford to be corrected. But the text argues the sacred requires a total openness to correction, which is impossible if you're clutching your beliefs like a safety blanket. Real agency is being able to change your mind when reality gives you new data. Ownership paralyzes that.
That distinction really helps. It's the difference between navigating a ship and refusing to admit the map is wrong just because you drew it yourself. This leads right into the big distinction the author makes between what we think is spirituality and what it actually is. They use this term, psychological artifacts.
And they give this brutal list of what modern spirituality usually is. The text says it's just an experience tailored to temperament, a form of self-expression, or, and this one stung a bit, a coping style.
Okay, let's drill down on coping style, because I think a lot of people, myself included, come to spirituality to cope, to deal with grief or anxiety or just the chaos of the world. Are we saying that's invalid?
Not invalid in terms of its effect, but invalid ontologically. That's the key distinction. A coping mechanism is useful. It helps you function. If believing in energy healing calms your anxiety, that's a functional benefit. But a coping mechanism is constructed by you, for you.
It's designed to soothe my specific neurosis.
Yes, the text calls them psychological artifacts because they are man-made objects found in the psyche. They aren't the bedrock of reality itself.
So it's like, here lies the ego of 21st century man, and here are the little spiritual trinkets he built to feel safe.
Pretty much. An artifact is a construction. It's pottery. The author's saying if you built it to fit your personality, it isn't the sacred. It's just psychology in a costume. It's a story you tell yourself.
And the contrast to the artifact is the invariant sacred. Let's define invariant. It means unchangeable, constant.
It does not vary. The sacred, according to this source, doesn't care about your history. It doesn't care about your preferences. It is not a tailored experience.
And that idea of a tailored experience is the friction point, right? We live in the age of the algorithm. Netflix knows what I like. Spotify creates a playlist for my mood. We are trained to expect the world to bend to us.
And the source argues that we have applied that same customer service logic to the divine. We want a truth that fits our user profile. We want a God who votes like us and validates our lifestyle. We treat the sacred like a service provider.
But the source says truth is the one thing you can't customize. If you do, you break it.
Think about gravity. Gravity is the ultimate invariant. It doesn't care if you're a good person. It doesn't care if you identify as a bird. If you jump off a roof, it pulls you down. You have to tailor yourself to it.
You can't negotiate with it.
You can't. And the text is saying spiritual reality is just as objective and uncompromising as that.
This feels like a callback to a much older way of seeing things. The text explicitly mentions ancient traditions. It says we've lost something.
It does. It points out that historically the spiritual path wasn't about finding your truth. It was about submitting to the truth.
Submit. That is a tough word for modern ears. It sounds authoritarian, like losing your freedom.
We have a visceral reaction to that word, don't we?
Yeah.
But in this context, submission doesn't mean bowing to a tyrant. It means aligning with reality. It means acknowledging the laws of the universe are bigger than your opinion of them. The text says they asked people to submit regardless of how it felt, benefited them, or fit their self-concept.
That's the kicker, regardless of how it benefited them. Today, the first question we ask is, what do I get out of this? Will this make me more successful? Will it lower my cortisol?
It's utilitarian spirituality. We're consumers shopping for metaphysics. And if the answer is no, we just swipe left. We discard it. The text says that when we prioritize the benefit to the self over the reality of the truth, we aren't seeking the sacred anymore. We're seeking comfort. We're seeking a drug.
It reminds me of someone shopping for a doctor who will tell them what they want to hear instead of the doctor who gives the right diagnosis.
That is a perfect analogy. If you keep firing doctors until one says, no, you don't need to change your diet, you'll feel better emotionally, but you'll stay sick physically.
And the result of everyone getting their own custom diagnosis, their own custom truth, is what the text calls fragmentation.
Many truths, many paths, many claims. If everyone has their own private truth, then there's no shared reality. We're all just living in separate bubbles.
And here's the crucial point the author makes about that. None of them able to correct the self that holds them.
That is the most dangerous part. If the ruler I use to measure the world is my own invention, well, then I can never measure myself. I can never realize I'm wrong. I can't grow because I've removed any external standard.
It's like playing tennis against a wall, but you just draw the target around wherever the ball happens to hit.
You always win. You always feel great. But you never get better at tennis. You're just trapped in a feedback loop of your own making.
It feels safe, though. I think that's why we do it. It protects the ego from the shock of being wrong.
It's safe for the ego, yes. But the text warns this safety comes at the cost of contact with the real. We trade the sacred for a mirror.
So if we accept this premise that my truth is a trap, how do we get out of it? How do we access this invariant sacred? The text gives us a roadmap, but it's not exactly a fun one.
No, it is not a list of 10 steps to happiness.
Right.
The requirements are structure, discipline, silence, and lineage.
Okay, let's run through those. They sound rigid. Why these four? Why not creativity, passion, and joy?
Because creativity, passion, and joy are often expressions of the self. They come out of you. Structure, discipline, silence, and lineage are designed to resist the self. They're reductive. They're meant to stop you from projecting your personality onto everything.
Okay, let's take silence. How does silence resist personalization?
Think about what happens when you're truly silent. Not just not talking, but mentally silent. You stop spinning the narrative. You stop explaining yourself. You stop justifying. You're just there. The ego thrives on noise and story. I am the person who did this. I feel this way because. Silence starves that narrator.
So it's not just quiet, it's the suspension of the autobiography.
Exactly.
What about lineage? That one feels very traditional, almost archaic.
Lineage acts as a check and balance. It means you are stepping into a stream that started long before you were born and will continue long after you die. It reminds you that you didn't invent this. You're a steward, not an owner.
So I can't just wake up one day and say, I've decided the new spiritual truth is that chocolate is holy. Lineage says, no, that's just what you want.
Exactly. Lineage prevents the ego from turning a revelation into a self-image. It forces you to measure yourself against something external. It's a lot like peer review in science.
This leads to what I think is the boldest claim in the entire text. It's a phrase that just stopped me cold. Impersonality makes it accurate.
Yeah, that flips our whole modern logic completely upside down.
It does. I mean, usually when we say something is impersonal, we mean it's cold, like a generic form letter. It feels dead. We want a personal relationship with everything.
That's our bias showing. We equate warmth with truth. But the text is redefining impersonal here. It says ancient holiness was impersonal, not cold, but invariant, not distant, but common.
Common. Unpack that word choice for me.
Think of common, like a town common, a public park. It belongs to everyone, precisely because it belongs to no one. If I fence off a piece of the park and call it mine, it's not common anymore. It's just private property. It becomes small.
So because it's impersonal, because it doesn't belong to any specific person's ego, it can be trusted by anyone.
Yes, if the truth depends on my personality, if it's my truth, you can't trust it. It's subjective. But if the truth is invariant, if it stands outside of me like a mountain, then you can trust it just as much as I can. It's objective. It's shared ground.
So the formula is personalization equals expressive and therefore subjective. Impersonality equals accurate and therefore objective.
That's the equation. If you want to express yourself, that's beautiful, that's art. Paint a picture, write a memoir. But if you want to find the sacred, you have to get over yourself. You have to step out of the frame.
This requires a massive shift in the questions we even ask ourselves. The text ends with this sort of ultimatum about our internal monologue.
It does. It says true spirituality does not ask, what does this mean for me?
Which is literally the question asked in every yoga class and therapy session I've ever been to. How does this resonate with you?
Instead, it asks, what is true? And can I stand inside it without bending it to myself?
Can I stand inside it without bending it? That's the test.
It's a physical metaphor. Imagine truth is a narrow room with rigid stone walls. If you try to enter and your ego is too inflated, you're carrying too much baggage, you might try to push the walls out to make it more comfortable for yourself.
But the sacred doesn't bend.
No, the stone doesn't move. So the question becomes, can you shrink? Can you drag the baggage? Can you align yourself to fit the space, rather than demanding the space expand to fit you?
That is so humbling. It suggests the goal isn't expansion of the self, which is what all modern self-help promises. Expand your potential. This is suggesting a reduction of the self to fit reality.
Or at least a transparency of the self. If you're looking through a window, you don't want to see the glass. You want to see the view. The self should be clear glass. But when we personalize everything, we're just painting on the glass and calling it the view.
This distinction between psychological artifacts and spiritual reality really haunts me. It makes me wonder how much of what I consider my core beliefs are just coping mechanisms.
It's the uncomfortable question, isn't it? The text says things like a personal narrative of meaning are artifacts. We all have that story. I suffered this because it made me stronger. The universe is teaching me a lesson.
And the text is saying, maybe that's just a story. Maybe there was no destiny. Maybe the universe isn't a school teacher for you personally.
It's saying that narrative is a psychological tool. It helps you function, it's useful, but it's not necessarily sacred. The sacred is what remains when you stop telling the story. What is there when the narrative stops?
That's terrifying, because if I stop telling the story of who I am, then who am I?
Exactly. It's a kind of death. The death of the narrator, which is probably why those ancient traditions focused on things like silence and discipline. You have to practice dying to that narrator so you can see what's actually alive underneath.
So as we wrap this up, we have to leave the listener with the challenge this text presents. It's not an easy one.
No, it's a test, a thought experiment to take with you. It's a bit of a subtraction game. Look at your deepest beliefs, the things you hold most sacred. Now, try to strip away everything about them that gives you comfort.
Strip away the parts that validate your politics. Strip away the parts that make you feel superior. Strip away the parts that promise you a happy ending or tell you that everything happens for a reason.
If you take all of that away, is there anything left standing?
And if the answer is yes, then whatever that remainder is, that might just be the invariant sacred.
And if the answer is no, if stripping away all the comfort leaves you with nothing,
Then you've got some remodeling to do.
indeed.
That's it for this deep dive. Thanks for listening.
See you next time.